flags all the time on our facility. There's a federal code about displaying American flag, and they don't have it illuminated in the evening. They don't
Joe
take
doesn't have a name tag?
on a lot of those facilities they have all over the place, not just in
Joe doesn't have his plaque.
So it's, yeah, it's actually a federal statute on how you can display a flag. If it's left up at night, it has to be illuminated from the and communities, busted in Paul.
Okay, the first item on the agenda, that's the DEP. We have like wastewater treatment, it's on for bond return, it's a public hearing. That fellow next to you, is that Mike?
The handsome guy?
Yeah. No, Pat,
I have no comments on the bond return, Mr. Chairman.
Rich?
No comments on the bond return.
I don't think Mike would.
Mike
have
has
anything.
nothing, Mr. Chairman.
This is an open, anything you want to say? This is an open public hearing on New York City DEP wastewater treatment plant. Anyone in the audience wish to be heard?
Being that there's no public comment, I'll make a motion with the next public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have to make a recommendation to the town.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Can we get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Anything I need to sign? That I need to sign something?
Aside from the check?
No, check already.
Okay.
You've already filled out the bond return form that was submitted. It's now, we bring a memo to the town board. So that's a 2-week process. It has to go to a work session, and then it goes to a voting session. So they're on a work session tonight, and then so it's a voting session next week. So it'll be 2 weeks before you can get on a work session, but it will be on that next work session, and then you can, we'll move from there. I'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a resolution for the DEP. For Drewville Road.
You have a chairman, or you have a resolution before you, Mr. Chairman, for the site, final site plan approval.
Do you have an additional, Rich, any additional comments?
No additional comments, Mr. Chairman.
And all of Rich's issues, Mr. Chairman, have been incorporated into the resolution, including the stormwater performance bond that we discussed at the last meeting.
Anything you want to say? I missed that. Can we get a motion on the resolution?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a resolution of the Planning Board of the Town of Carmel, number 15-21, September 30th, 2015, tax map number 66.2-53, Drewville Road Stormwater Control Project, final site plan approval.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Site plan, New York SMSA Limited Partnership. Did Mike have anything, Pat?
Can't read.
I have no memo from Mike.
No memo.
You can tuck it back
I can see if there was one, sir.
I don't think so, I don't have any. Rich?
No additional comments.
Pat?
At the prior meeting, Mr. Chairman, we'd asked the applicant to address a few things. The first was the request to explore possibilities of co-locating the antenna at an existing antenna location, so we don't have a proliferation of individual sites. They have submitted a report from their site selection consultant documenting that there are no existing facilities within the area that needs to be serviced from this antenna, so there is no co-location opportunities available to them. We had concerns at the initial application of the installation of the antenna above the roof or the parapet of the building, so that there were facilities sticking up above the building. The applicant has relocated those antennas so that they are flush mounted even with the top of the building parapet, so the antennas are not sticking up above the top of the building any longer. And to demonstrate that, the applicant, you can see the black boxes that are the now relocated antennas. And to demonstrate that, the applicant has submitted a visual assessment analysis with photo simulations of what the building will look like with the antennas installed on them. And Mike's comments from the last meeting related to pre-existing zoning nonconformities that have never been addressed on this site that would require variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that, I believe, is Mike's outstanding comment from the last meeting. They would need variances for the existing site. None of those variances relate to the antenna installation. They're pre-existing conditions relating to the site.
Chris, you have anything
No additional comments.
from around the board?
I do have a question,
I do
Mr.
too.
Chairman.
Shoot, go ahead. Tony.
I'm not really understanding that elevation. Are those black boxes behind the parapet? Is that what that's saying?
In front of
in
it.
front of the parapet.
So they'll be painting them to match. That's a bit deceiving, the image. It'll be the same color as the side of the building. I think they've used black just to illustrate the location.
And the pictures, right? You look at those visual pictures.
You don't
can
see
har- I can't see them at all, right? I couldn't hardly find the,
That's kind of the idea.
oh, so they're gonna sit in front and the same color. I got you. Now I understand.
Did I see that?
So it's basically sitting on the fascia of the building.
It has no antennas, and if you flip it to page 3, it shows them, but they almost match, they're gonna match the same color of the buildings.
This is before.
These two,
Right.
no antennas.
They're difficult
I
to
go to
see.
the after picture. Yeah, it's very hard to see in the,
What's that?
That's the goal.
it's pretty cool.
It's right
Can't
here on
hardly
the
see
side.
anything, right?
Right
So
here.
they're laying out here in front.
Yeah, they're laying on front. They're not gonna be above the
yeah.
building line.
Yeah, there's a peak of the parapet. It's the directional thing with these.
Just to reintroduce myself, I'm Ed Tiber, representing New York SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, from the law firm of Snyder and Snyder. I have Pat here representing KMB, and we'd like to answer any questions you have about the revised application, and hopefully tonight get a referral to the zoning board so we can appear on their November agenda and seek the variances that at the last meeting were indicated are required.
Anybody else around the board?
I have a question. Would pertain to town code. On elevation drawing Z03, they're showing a generator hub. Is it permissible to bring in a portable generator by town code, curbside to?
Yeah, from my understanding, and I think the applicant can speak to it, the FCC requires that they have backup power for our cell phones for these facilities, so they all have electrical generators.
But there's provisions in the town code that they would not be in violation?
They're
bringing
not
in a-
violating the town code.
And like Mr. Cleary said, this generator would only be, in the event of a sustained power
Understood.
outage. Right.
No, understood, but
Yep.
there could be a safety concern too for the public.
Yeah, I mean, the generator still needs to meet building fire code issues. They need a fire permit, a building permit, electrical permit, building permit for the generator itself.
Okay.
But just for clarification, there's not gonna be a generator there. That's only,
Correct.
you're gonna bring a portable generator in the event that they would lose power?
Thank you for clarifying, correct, yes. There's no generator proposed right now. This is just for FCC requirements in the event of a power outage.
And
And also, just to note, in the event that should happen, it would not only be to support cell phone service, but also emergency services for town, county, and state first responders.
Why it's not permanent?
The generator?
Yeah.
They don't have, it's not that it's not permitted, there's no room on the site. So that building goes property line to property line. They have a difficult time, they'd lose a parking space if they had to install a permanent generator. So there really is no spot to put a generator on this particular property.
what's on the third floor of the building right now? Is it residential?
Residential.
Is there any issue with the antennas that close to residential?
There's not. It's a good question, David, and you should ask that every time. And they did submit their RF analysis report, which documents that their level of electromagnetic radiation is dozens of times below the federal standard. We have no ability, we are prevented from dealing with that issue specifically. So you couldn't, as a planning board member, opine as to the suitability of the radiation impacts. The federal government has exempted you specifically from dealing with that issue. So all we can do is verify that they are below the standard. And their report documents that they're significantly below the standard. So that means there's no issue. There are instances where multiple carriers may be on a building, and that may limit access to a roof, for example.
Right.
But there's never been an instance where below the antenna is a concern. And it's primarily because those are directional. So when you're behind the antenna, there's really not a
Right,
lot of
because that
radiation at
patrol
all.
lights running in.
Standing in front of it, you got a different story.
Right.
Was that on the market?
Yep, that was exactly
I'm
right.
doing your job for you here.
Yeah,
Come
you're
on.
doing a great job, appreciate it.
I'll, I have just one more thing, if I may.
Sure.
This is not I'll try and be as politically correct as possible, not the prettiest building in the downtown. So is it,
All this stuff.
Yeah, it
the
is.
tallest?
It is. That's why they're there.
Are we allowed to ask for maybe some improvements to this building?
You absolutely
As
can.
part of this application? Is something
That
we
is
could,
one area with these applications where you have full discretion to deal with the aesthetic impact of the antennas. So my opinion is lowering them and painting them the color of the building is an improvement from where
Right.
they were originally when they were sticking up above. But you can certainly ask for additional screening measures or stealth technologies that may minimize the visual impact of those antennas. And I will say, this is the more visible side of that building.
Right, it's the Route 6 side, right?
It's the Route 6 side, and it's it's the uglier side of the building, no offense to the building, and it's very visible as you drive by.
Could we ask for some improvements that really have nothing to do with the antennas at all, just to ask that somebody comes back and,
You can ask this applicant, he'll tell you he has nothing to do with that, and we'll ask the landlord, but you can certainly raise those concerns.
I would at least float that on the table. I wouldn't have a problem with them going to get the variances, and then when they come back, I would certainly want to, again, kind of a quid quo thing, it's not the prettiest building in the world. If you could give us some improvements to the building, even if they have not a lot to do with the antennas themselves, and I'm not sure where you go with it. There's not a whole lot of flexibility here anyway, but it'd be nice if we could come back with some options, maybe.
Well,
for the
I can
fire
give you an
escapes or-
example. So they've said, we're going to paint the antennas to match the building.
Right.
In other instances, the building needed a coat of paint.
Right.
So they would paint the entire building to match the antennas.
And that's where I'm going, maybe aesthetically, we
That's a
can do
fair question.
something
That's a
that-
fair
that
comment.
If we could do something along those lines, that's where I would ask, if we can get just some improvement.
Yeah, we
The
would,
building itself, right, to the facade of the building, even if it had nothing to do with the antennas, again,
yeah, we'd certainly be willing to engage in that conversation and would, the only limitation is obviously our lease area is on the roof of the building and, for the purpose of antennas. So the owner of the building is ultimately going to have to sign off on changes to other aspects of the building, but we're certainly willing to, pursue those requests after obtaining variances and see what we can do.
I think the owner of that building would be happy for you to paint that building.
Yeah, I think that coat of paint would certainly be a reasonable request, yeah.
The thing is, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to pursue that?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. To the extent that,
do, right?
Verizon's lease authorizes them to make any changes to the building, they're certainly willing to do so as you mentioned, as sort of a quid pro quo exchange
On
here.
that building.
And beyond our lease area, we'd certainly go to the landlord or the owner of the building and ask for his cooperation. I personally haven't dealt with the owner of the building, but I hear he's cooperative, so I can't promise what he would agree to or not, but we'd certainly take it to him and come back to you with a yes or no.
This building is horrible.
I would be interested to see his denial.
How quickly he says no, you mean?
So evidently you will try.
Yes, yep.
Should we send him to the ZBA?
Yes.
And Pat, can you clarify what we send to the ZBA for, so we can make a
So
motion to
all
that
of
effect?
all of the variances relate to the existing building. There's a parking variance.
Parking as well.
Mike has it listed.
These fire escapes.
Lot area, lot width, lot depth, front yard, side yard, rear yard, height, and lot coverage. So virtually all of the zoning requirements are violated by the existing building.
I don't know what they're, it's canopies, you know, it's canopies over the windows, not my thing, but the building looks terrible.
No, I know. Be nice if it was just a natural brick.
The appearances. Go ahead.
Pat, the intent, the FCC compliance report prepared by Pinnacle,
Yep.
there is not an engineer stamp on here. Okay? So to me, this is just a report.
It needs to be stamped.
I'd like
Our
to
code-
see a PE's stamp on this,
Yep.
verifying that this report is accurate.
Yep. Ed, can you provide that for us?
Absolutely, yep.
All right, guys?
I can say, Anthony, that I know that they provide, Pinnacle provides PE stamp reports.
Yeah,
We've
that's
seen
not a
them here
I'd
before.
like to see it.
Yeah.
Good, it's a good catch. We'll get it for us.
The variances required are listed by,
Mike.
Pat.
Yeah.
Can we get a motion on them? Everybody understand the variances?
I would move that we send them to the zoning board for the variances required.
Mike refers to it as cleaning up variances.
Right.
Those are all pre-existing conditions.
Can we get a second?
I'll second the motion to deny them to the ZBA.
All in favor?
Does he have the stamp?
Thanks.
Do you have your stamp, Mr. Chairman? Yep. Can you bring that plan up?
I have two sets, do you need just one?
Just one that needs to get a stamp, and that's the version you'll bring to the ZBA with the chairman's signature on it.
It's okay.
Thanks.
So we'll go to the zoning board in November and come back to you, hopefully with the
November
required
14th.
variances and,
November 14th.
on 14th, yep.
Yeah, November 14th. is the
Yes.
meeting.
Yep.
Check through with the planning department and with Pat.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a nice night.
Cozy Cub Day Care Center. Did Mike got anything,
I did not see anything new from Mike for this meeting, no, Mr. Chairman. Did you see anything?
No.
what was his old statement? Do you have some concern?
I'll read you his initial memo, Mr. Chairman. He's clarifying that the applicant's asking for a waiver for the daycare center and to add 13 parking spaces. He wanted an on-site circulation plan. The spaces, the area between parking spaces 8 and 9 were not 24-foot wide. The aisle width wasn't sufficient initially, and he wanted to see a zoning compliance chart on the table documenting zoning compliance.
No, but I just got one question for you answer. Did you answer most of those? Okay. Okay, Rich?
So, the application is a site waiver to alter a former school to a daycare center located at 245 East Lake Boulevard. The applicant's representative met with the engineering department on Friday, September 18th. Based on this meeting and review of the updated submittal, all of the engineering department comments have been addressed. This department does not have an objection to the site plan waiver, as there are no changes being made to the site. There will be no increase to either water or sanitary use. He addressed all our comments.
Can you do me a favor?
Yes, sir.
You stamped that as the first time I heard you say everything was answered. Pat?
But you know why, Mr. Chairman, is because you told us to meet, and that is gonna be our pro forma from going on in.
There were two issues with respect to this, Mr. Chairman, that the board should be aware of. The applicant has documented that they've complied with the New York State Office of Children and Family Service requirements for the daycare facility. And there was a ZBA interpretation that was granted indicating that the daycare center is in fact a permitted use at this site. So the ZBA has already rendered that decision based on the application that Joel provided to them
When did they do that?
in June 4th.
So it's been before the ZBA.
Correct. And just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, as an accessory use to a church. That's what the ZBA ruled, that the daycare center is a permitted accessory use to the church.
Okay. Joe?
Just want to say that I appreciate meeting with Rich to clear up all the comments he had from the last meeting, which we've done. We've answered all of Mike's comments and Pat's comments. If you have the letter that I sent, it enumerates all their comments and all of the responses. So I think at this particular point, we've done everything that we can. There's nothing more to do on this site. We respectfully request the waiver.
Questions around the board?
So you got the play area at the back there, right? That area, the play area? And there's not a lot of detail on that. Is the expectation that the gate or the opening for the play area would be into the daycare itself, or is it going to be into the drive?
You gotta take that, you got,
Keep dropping that paper there.
let's take the whole,
It's going to take an engineer to get it.
Do you want a good one?
To answer your question, Dave, there's an exit entrance right over here, and the entrance into the play area will be right off here, not anywhere near the parking area. There'll be a walk over here, they'll go out and into the play area.
So right by the entrance going into the actual daycare itself?
Correct. That's the main entrance into the daycare.
What are the typical hours of operation here?
The normal hours of operation are 8 in the morning until 6 at night.
Weekdays or every day?
No, just weekdays.
Is the daycare affiliated with the church, or is it a separate
No,
entity?
it's private. Actually, the benefit to this particular project, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, because the daycare is not affiliated with the church, the assessor will now assess this and will actually, the Mahopac School District and the town of Carmel will be getting taxes on this building. So it's a win-win for everybody.
what did you say the ZBA said?
That the use as a daycare center, as a permitted accessory use to the church was allowable.
Anybody else?
I'm gonna, there's no existing site plan on file with the town for this particular lot, correct?
No, I believe there is, because this was taken off an existing site plan when this building was built.
Is the actual school to the left on the map the same site?
This is one, yes, I outlined the site.
It's all one lot.
It's all one tax map lot, yes,
So there's two separate buildings on the same lot,
correct.
and there's, because I'm a little confused. The front of the building that you're saying that the daycare is going to be in says Fellowship Hall.
Well, it's known as the Bishop Mahoney Building, this, what's in orange here, that's correct.
Okay. And the section, so that,
Carl, there's actually 3 buildings on there. It says the old church. So to the
Well, but
right
that's
of the
all,
orange.
it's all connected, though.
The
All
church
right.
and this building are,
They're all connected. This is the original church.
Apologize.
This is the school that was there until a couple of years ago, and this is the other school.
the different grades. The younger kids were.
no,
in
I understand that, but again, it was, so is there an existing site plan?
I just said that this was taken off an existing site plan.
So there's a site plan for the whole,
That was approved by the town of Carmel?
I have a copy of it here.
I'm just,
What's, I don't, let me get it.
normally a school is not something that comes in front of the planning board.
Department of Education?
Well, this is gonna be private daycare.
I'm not,
I was talking about from the beginning.
I'm talking about previous use.
Right, like you would never see Mayapack schools
A
or any of
public
those things.
school wouldn't, a parochial school would. So there's a distinction between the two school uses. A private school, a parochial school would come before your board.
Planning board.
Public schools are exempt.
Parochial school would come before the board.
Yep.
There's a site plan here that's dated December 4th, 1990. It's titled St. John the Evangelist Parish New Youth Center, and alterations to church and rectory. Shows the entire site, plus all the, right over here, there's a street called McMahon Place, which subdivides this parcel from the church parcel.
Who prepared that, Joel?
Belfaro and Pavarini, architects and planners from Purchase, New York. I can make a copy to give to Rose. Actually, I just realized I got this from Rose. So she must have a copy.
Okay.
Because it was a little confusing. I actually looked at the site today. Like, all the parking area, there's no marked parking spots, there's no...
Well, if you recall about, I think it's about maybe more, maybe 6 years ago, the school was abandoned, so
No, I
there was no reason to upgrade and keep the parking
But
stalls.
the other building was used for other purposes, correct? I mean, you just said that was a rectory hall, based on the...
Which building are you talking about?
You just read it off the site plan. It was...
Building in
But
orange.
what you're talking about, let me clarify that.
Formally.
Right,
I understand it, but what I'm trying to drive here is there's multiple uses on the same site.
correct.
It's not just a daycare center, and
Right.
I'm just trying to clarify the fact that all those other uses throughout the years have been approved. I realize the school was separate, but, you know, there's,
Well, and the church.
The
still
school
uses-
is here, the original church is here, the building we're talking about is over here, the new church is over here, and the rectory is over here. This was,
I understand.
and it's all there, and I mean, they all have permits, everything has been permitted, and COs. So, what's the question?
I was just making sure that.
Oh, yeah.
all of
We
those
can verify
things-
that, Carl. It's a
Yeah.
good question, and I think we need to verify, and we should have done that originally, to verify that all of that is there legally and pursuant to an original site plan. So Joel is suggesting it is. I don't doubt him.
Right.
But we'll verify.
That's only my problem is asking for a waiver. We've had it in the past where people have asked for waivers where they were required to get other things had they in fact been in front of us for a complete approval of the site plan. Okay.
Is there anything, Pat, with that needs to be cleared up before
Yeah,
you grant
and
a
I think
waiver?
it's just verification. So if in fact Joel's correct, then we can verify that, there's no, if you choose to do the waiver, there's no issue with that. But Carl's point, if that was never approved, we don't have a site plan, we shouldn't waive a non-site plan, we should grant a site plan.
So we're waiving from a non-approved plan.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the site, I mean, there's no traffic direction, there's no markings for traffic flow, there's two separate entrances. I still, and again, I know you're asking for a waiver, and this is really part of a review process. The idea of putting a kids' play area for a daycare center on a parking lot with a mat. I
It's
mean,
fenced in.
Can I finish? Most of all the applicants that have ever come in front of us that we've approved, those play areas are outside in a fenced-in area. Most of it is lawn. I just have an issue with the idea of putting it in a parking lot, asphalt or not, and putting just a mat down, and I realize you're fencing it. But is that,
all the code requirements of the town of Carmel and the state of New York.
I would just clarify, it's not something that we have reviewed and approved in the past. It's not consistent with the applications that have come in front of us.
You know,
I have a
See that-
different-
you
I
see
think we're
that
just
map?
delaying something, this is something good for the community, and.
There's
just-
plenty of things that come in front of us, Joel, that are good for the community, without a doubt. And I could list off 30 of them.
Old dude.
I have a question. Who is the applicant in this case?
Well, that-
Because
It's the
Because-
Cozy Cub, Cozy, whatever it's
are
called.
they the
Cozy.
owner? Because isn't that property still owned by the Archdiocese?
That's the interesting twist. So it remains in the ownership of the church. This is a lease, I suppose, of the church.
Yes.
But it is such a lease that it allows us to tax the private entity operating on the church
In other words,
land.
just the building alone, that what I showed in orange, that building, the assessor went out, assessed it for a value, and then it's going to tax it based on that value.
Okay, but the lease includes the use of the parking and so
Yes,
on and so forth?
yes, of course.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. yeah.
It's a little odd that the, you know,
It is unusual. We've never come across a situation like that before. And net, it only benefits us if we're getting a rateable out of that, so that's not a bad thing.
this parking lot is also used by churchgoers like myself
Well,
on the
that's
weekends.
part of what I'm looking at when we,
I know. Monday to Friday. That's why I asked that question.
No, that's not quite accurate. That portion was originally used when the school was in operation, that part. I'll do this again.
I understand it. My kids went there. I get
Okay,
it.
but the parking that you're talking about for the church services is actually,
Oh, no, it's overflow parking. I've used it
Oh, okay.
myself.
All right,
It's
so
it is.
overflow parking. So-
no, I wanted to make sure that you understood that it was
Yeah,
not
no,
part
no,
of the main,
I'm
wasn't part of the
fully
main
aware of
parking.
the site.
Well, what I can offer, Carl, is Joel was before us last year, the year before, to subdivide a portion of the church's property. And at that time, and Mike can confirm this, we went through the full parking requirement for the entire campus. And that area, Joel's right, isn't assigned to the church, but it's overflow, it's practically overflow parking for the church. That's assigned parking for the school. But it in total meets the requirements for everything, but the fact that they've changed the occupancy of the buildings, when you go there on Sunday, you're gonna park wherever you can park.
now, a question, since that's not a school anymore. You know, you still have the possible usage somewhere down the road of that separate building and its effect on the site and the plan.
Right, you mean the adjacent building, not the orange one, the one next to the orange one?
Correct.
The old school.
Yeah, no question about it. And if it were, it would have to come back to you for either request for a waiver or site plan approval, whatever it is. Or if the church reuses it, it doesn't come back to you at all.
Pat's right. In other words, let's say, as I said about, I think it's about 6 years ago, the Archdiocese removed the school from that building.
Understand
If for some time in the future, they decide to reactivate it, we would have to come in with at that point, a site plan showing that if the daycare is still there, we have to show that the daycare and the school and the total parking, which is all the way in that leg going up on the right-hand side,
Well,
which
don't-
actually is the only area that is striped, so we'd have to show that, plus I think the number of cars that we have for the daycare center, that total would conform to both uses. Right now, as I said, the other building is not in use.
Well, if you already have the approval off that map, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that.
I'm
right?
sorry?
I said, if you already have the approval previously in 1990, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that unless the parking calculations change.
Well, then, in actuality, if you look at this site plan, the parking that we're doing for the daycare center is separate from the parking that is shown for
Well,
the
that's my
for the school.
point. You points
Yeah, so
to
you're-
that you
you're-
wouldn't
you're-
necessarily
so-
have to come back in.
Right, unless they decided to either put an addition on or do something. If the
I
building was the exact same footprint as it is today, excuse me, you're probably right.
And by the way, Carl, the parking requirement for the daycare center is actually less than it is for the school. So if the school ever came back, he'd need to find new parking spaces.
What's the anticipated enrollment here?
40 students.
40. So potentially 40 vehicles dropping off and picking up every morning and every,
Well, again, there's a code requirement. There's a code requirement which says, town code says that there is one parking space for every staff member and one parking space for every 10 pupils. So we have 6 staff members and 40 pupils. 40 divided by 10 is equal to 4, so it's a total of 10 parking spaces for the parking, and then we added additional parking spaces for the drop-off. So we have a total of 13. So we have actually more parking than the code requires.
Because you never know how many of those 5-year-olds will drive to this facility.
Well, you never know, they could change the legal, I think.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of the traffic,
That's what I was thinking.
you know, and the queue, the line it's gonna form on that street is bad enough on Sundays.
Well, that's precisely the issue, and that was really probably the only issue that would warrant site plan for this. So if that's a concern for you, don't waive site plan, request a site plan to be prepared, showing how the queuing's gonna work. Joe's
Traffic
given you
pattern,
that in
where
this,
they're
so
gonna-
there's a practical answer to it here. But if you wanna condition this on some queuing obligation, some pickup or drop-off maneuver, we can't do it through the waiver. We'd have to do it through a site plan. So you should bear that in mind in considering the waiver, Carl.
Joe, will the daycare center have a drop-off procedure where they'll have staff outside, grab and go?
Of course, the children will not be allowed to
They
go
do
from,
have a- no,
and the drop-off area is right by the entrance. So and again, it's a one-way traffic pattern, so nobody's going to be backing out and turning around. Again, if you look at the arrows I've shown there, they come in off McMahon Place, they'll be dropping their kids off in the drop-off area, which I show on the drawing, and then they'll just continue and come out onto East Lake Boulevard. So I think we've created a traffic pattern which is very conducive to, to a drop-off area, and the parking for the teachers and stuff is facing toward the cemetery in the back, so they won't interfere with that. So it'll be an easy traffic flow. You come, go into the 3 or 4 parking spaces for drop-off, your kid is taken in, you don't back out, you just continue and continue out onto East Lake Boulevard. So, I don't know anything more we could do.
The only
We've
time-
we've answered all the engineering questions, the building inspector, the planner's question.
I would just,
And everything here, I think we could certainly find out tomorrow from Michael that everything here has a CO or is a pre-existing situation. The only building that might be a pre-existing situation is the church, which was built a long, long time ago. But all the other buildings are permitted and CO'd, and I would ask that you grant the waiver subject to receipt from to the planner that all these buildings are properly operated and have COs on them. We've gone to the extra mile to conform to all the requirements, to meet with the consultants and to make sure that everything is in order. I don't know what else you can do. We've done everything.
I would just add that most of the applications in all my years being here, really the two things that we look at is the placement of a play area, pedestrian traffic flow, and vehicular traffic flow. And in all honesty, most of the sites really don't have any physical changes. For the most part, you're taking a yard area, you're putting a fence, you're putting in, But my point is the difference, there are differences in this application. For instance, it used to be a school. So, in the course of a review, maybe the waiver of a public hearing, I would consider to be a possibility based on the fact of its pre-existing conditions. But the idea that this, and again, we're almost doing a review within the last 2 meetings we're doing, and we're still asking for a waiver. I'm just saying, be careful, because it's really not much different than any other application that comes in front of us that's a daycare center. There's not a lot of physical changes to a site. Those are the primary things we
So
look at.
there's your perfect reason to consider the waiver.
But
We're
the
not
town-
changing anything.
But the town
And the
put
areas
this
that-
specifically in the code for us to review in a site plan procedure for daycare centers.
And you have in the past.
And we have in the past. So that's my point is, there's really not a lot of difference between this application and any other application previously that came in front of us. It's the same.
What is going to change between now and a site plan? Nothing.
I could take every one of those other applications, put their first map in front of us and tell you the exact same thing.
Well, this is the second map. That's correct. You're correct. We met with the
No, but
consultant.
my point is, you're asking for a waiver. They didn't. They went through a process.
But those were sites where there was new buildings. And I did the last one over on, across from Lake Lenina. That was a vacant piece of property.
No,
and
there was originally a commercial building. from
It
the
was a
original, from...
nursery. Come on, there's nothing, how could you compare what was there before to the building that's there now?
No, and you bring up a very valid building. The changes that were from the original commercial building that you presented to the point when the
Correct.
church, when the daycare was put in the building,
That's correct.
the only actual physical change to the outside of the building was the added play area
That's correct.
on the side of the building and the fencing.
Well, just so the new...
There
members
wasn't any
get- no,
fit-
let's get it clarified. The original person that I dealt with was not Mr. Boniello. It was a different person, the building was similar, and the uses were not the same.
But
Let me finish. When Boniello took over, there was a whole problem. It took 3 years to get the DEP, let me finish, DEP to give up that 50-foot of property.
quite aware of
I mean, there was a whole different situation. There was a vacant piece of property. Mr. Boniello took it over. The design of the building was changed completely from what the first owner wanted. It was completely different. And then he had the opportunity to have these little, I think it's called Little Feet
Yes.
Daycare Center. So we took the building, we took the parking, which we had before, and we had this area between the upper parking lot and the lower parking lot, which became the play area.
I
Now,
understand
here we
that.
have, let me finish now. We have an existing site. There are no new buildings. There is no change to the flow of traffic because all of the parking for that original school is up in the upper leg over there, where the parking that I show there is not striped, was never striped for parking, and was never used for parking. So we're taking that opportunity to use that for the parking. The play area is fenced in, protected. The children do not go into the parking lot. They go from the door, the entrance, exit door, ingress and egress door, and directly into the playground. If you go through the code, and I'm sure the consultants have, for a daycare center, we've done all that. What else do we, except for several thousands of dollars of money and another couple of months of time, what else are we going to find out? The consultants have done it all already. And I'm finished. That's
Can I
it.
just make a statement?
Sure.
You notice I'm not saying much.
I know.
That church, I was the chairman of the planning board, and that came forward and got all that construction, the church and everything else.
That's right.
I became commissioner of highways. I read the town recommendations for East Lake Boulevard. And the town had passed, it's not these board members, so I'm talking about board members, you notice I'm not worried at all because it's not these. The town had passed a resolution that there be no parking on East Lake Boulevard.
I remember that.
As Commissioner of Highways, I said, well, I'm not going to, we put up the signs. We put up all the signs. 5 o'clock one morning, the county exec advised me that I personally will take down every one of those signs. So I don't say anything dealing with that church all the way back up. I could.
The only point from my inquiry is, I know that traffic patterns and problem that can be created, and you say there's what else can be done, I'm just wondering if allowing the line that may develop to be off the street, if you were to come in the other entrance below, out the drawing, so that if there's 4, 5, or 6, or 10 cars waiting, they're off the street, but I don't know if that helps, because that's a narrower street, and it's even more problematic, so that may not be beneficial.
Plus, most people use it as an exit right now, and it's on a turn, and you're going up a hill.
And it's hilly also. I think, to answer your question, if you watch the arrows, the arrow to the far right is actually at McMahon Place. The third arrow is where the drop-off is. So you do have plenty of room. You have at least 5 or 6 cars of queuing. And children do not come at the same time. It depends when the parents go to work and so on and so forth. And from our experience up in Carmel, and my grandchildren goes to the one in Mayapack by Society Hill. And I pick up and drop off every once in a while, and I've never had, actually, there's never been a queuing problem. You go in, there's only 2 or 3 cars at a time, because, again, everybody comes and goes at different times. I mean, it's not like a Dunkin' Donuts where you have people backing up every 8 o'clock every morning to get their coffee. Again, I would respectfully request that we do this so they can get started. You know, obviously, it's a win situation for everybody. And I will personally go to the town hall tomorrow and get the COs for all the buildings on that particular site. Or if they're pre-existing, like the church may be, I think this is called a letter of pre-existing non-conforming situation.
But Joel, one thing that I will say, you know what Carl is saying, his points that he's bringing up is legitimate points.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not something that
I will
he
get
just
the documentation that he's up.
rationally bring up.
I don't
It's
disagree.
something that's rational for,
Well, I have a couple of questions.
sure.
My concern is the traffic pattern. It's a congested area because the roads are narrow. You said the daycare runs what hours?
8 to 6, 8 in the morning till 6 at night.
Okay, and what hours does the school run?
The school's not there anymore.
No, I'm talking about, the school's not being used
No,
at
the
all?
school's not being used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's completely
It's,
vacant.
as I said,
So
Just
6 years
the
ago.
church.
the
and
queuing problem will be
old
with the
church and
church,
new
right?
church,
Yeah, but
that's
see,
all.
church, weddings, funerals, that kind of thing, right? That would probably be your
Well, the
conflict
funerals,
times, right?
no, the funerals are usually in the main church, which is on the site
So-
on the
so
other side.
become-
Yeah, but they do have mass there at 7:30
have,
and 9 at that parish right there. No, during the week, that's at that church.
You said 9 to what?
7:30, I guarantee you,
Right
at
here on the road.
7:30 at that McMahon Place and East Lake Boulevard,
In the old church.
the old church.
But there's
I know the
CCD.
7:30.
There are CCD,
Religious Ed is in the afternoon
Yeah.
or whatever, it's all during the week, yeah.
and that's going on around the same time.
Well, no, it's going on, the CCD, I think, is at 4 o'clock or something like that. And in fact, interesting you should mention that, because in discussing it with Father Quinn, they are going to do a whole new situation, and it's because CCD was, you're right, it was at 4 o'clock, it was very congested. And they're not going to allow, again, let me show you what they're going to do.
I know because I'm dropping off right now at
No, I know.
CCD.
It's bedlam. Right now, the cars either come up McMahon Place or that side street over here, and they come up to the gate here, throw the kid out, and which they're not supposed to do, and let the child go in there. What they're going to do now is they're going to make the parents go into the main parking lot of the church and walk their child over. This will be closed off completely because what happens is, what was happening up until last June, is that cars would line up over here, and there you have like several hundred students at a time. We're not talking about 40. It's a big difference. And so what's going to happen, in fact, what we're doing also is from McMahon Place to the church parking lot, we're going to be putting a new sidewalk, which should be starting any day now, so parents can park there, walk safely across there, and bring their children into CCD. So in effect, this building will have no effect on this because all of this parking, drop off will be at the church parking lot, sidewalk coming across here, and there'll be no cars interacting here at all.
But is all this going to be marked, though? Because
Oh,
right now, when you're over there...
Let me tell you something.
Wait, can I
There
finish?
will be people here to make sure that nobody pulls into there.
Okay, can I go back
Relying
to,
on people.
before you go there, so that actual old school building then is used for functions, it is used for CCD?
CCD, yes, but the school is gone, the K-8
So
school
it's
is
not
gone.
a vacant, not used building?
Oh, no, it's used.
And those
And-
are
and-
two
and-
separate lots from that and the church?
No, this is all one lot.
No,
Oh, the main church is over here.
Is that part of the same
so
site?
you have a use on that lot with parking on a different lot
No,
Yes?
without,
you're confusing it now.
no, I'm not confusing it.
Yes, you are.
No, you're right, and
We have vehicular traffic, we have
Pedestrian.
pedestrian traffic, and we have no map that is showing us. In fact, you're telling us now you're going to be changing things.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do.
Sidewalk.
No, it has everything to do with that site.
You know, and I'm remembering now, Carl, when they did that subdivision of that parcel in the back, Joel was showing us not only, there's a parcel across the street, I think, that's somehow involved in this. There's like a compound of 4 lots or something like that that are used by the church in all of its activities. We do have a map that shows how that all works.
Correct.
And I don't know if it's
And
that
actually,
map or
it
not,
was
Joe.
approved by this board.
That separate parcel.
I think it encompassed this, I think it encompassed all the church's lands and how it
But
works.
they had those people from the corner that came in and objected to the,
That's exactly right. That's exactly, you remember it?
yes.
Yeah, I can't remember the plan itself, but I
Remember the
think it, so do I, yeah. She yelled.
Correct. This is the site we're talking about over here. This is the main church, and we had gotten approval by this board to completely revamp the parking in the church. Which is absolutely right.
But if things are changing, if there's a new sidewalk, we should see that.
Well,
don't we?
then,
Yeah. I think we need clarification on the complete site.
I'm a little confused now too. Is the waiver of the site plan from the whole site or just this particular site? I'm
So what he's requesting is just this parcel,
So
not
that's
the
a
whole thing.
separate site?
But
But I
that's-
think, to Carl's point, we looked at it as an entire
it's
parcel.
an entire
first.
site plan. It's,
What they're talking about.
There's no subdivision, so.
it's,
That's the old school.
and again, I don't,
Directory.
I'm not trying to make this more complicated than it needs to be. I don't think it requires anything more than the site plan to come in front of us. We do a review and we're done. To me, there's too many questions about the
What's this
basic
hour? To
things that
walk
we
from
look
here
at
to
with the
the school?
daycare.
That's what he's saying.
Vehicular traffic, pedestrian
You can't
traffic,
drive in there?
and a play area. There's nothing,
And what, let's say we show the overall site plan. This will look exactly as you see it now.
and so did every other applicant that came in front of us with the same application, Joel. Even your
this is-
site that you're talking about up there.
But you're talking about
There was-
apples and oranges. This is a
I'm not
totally different
apples and
situation.
oranges. It's, you're changing a use, you're
No,
asking
no,
us
that's,
to
that's
look.
not true, not true, not true. Read the decision in order from the zoning board, that we're not changing the use. That's not true.
No,
No.
you're going for a use that's permitted by the zoning board for a church.
Okay, so, it was
Okay,
a school
so they-
before, it's a school now, so it's not changed, don't say, it. We're not changing the use.
It's
Look,
changing
read-
to a
read the- Read the
daycare.
decision.
Permitted use.
It's a permitted use.
I understand that, but it's a
And
permitted
it's
use.
the same permitted use that was done before.
There was a daycare there before?
It was a school, okay? And the zoning board in their,
Zoning board's decision says it's consistent with what was there before, it's a permitted use.
I understand
He's
that.
not changing the use.
But it still
So we're not
requires
changing
us
the
to
use.
look
Thank
at
you.
what the town wrote in a code pertaining to a daycare center, correct?
Yes, absolutely, it has to
Yes.
meet that
And
requirement.
and those are the things that I'm looking at. The three main things that we always look at on every application
Yeah,
that
those were
comes in
raised
front
by
of us.
Mike in his memo, 15639.2.
Well, it's more to it's more to the circulation pattern, the placement of the things that we actually have control of. A lot of things with the building as far as building codes and school codes really have nothing to do with the planning board. It's not a physical part of a site plan. Those, I'm just saying, it's really no different than any other application that came in front of us for this type of use.
Wait a minute, how many daycare centers that came before this board had an existing building, existing paved parking, and it was all there? How many came before this board? Zero.
Really?
Yeah. How many daycares were existing, where the situation was existing?
Apparently, this
It's
one's not
country.
existing neither, Joel, but
No,
on the
it's
grand
not.
scheme of things, you brought up a lot of
If it was
points.
existing, you wouldn't even be here.
Right, so, but you brought up a lot of points, Joel, that I think we all need clarification on. You brought up the big thing now that is, I think, in my mind, and maybe some of the other board members' minds, but I'll speak for myself, you now have this traffic circulation going in there for just the daycare itself. However, you have the owner of the property, Father Quinn, indicating that he's gonna shut off traffic flow during the afternoons when religious ed is there. However, you also then have church times that are going on at that facility, not the main church. The church goes on at that building that is connected to this. So as much as what you've provided us answers a lot of the questions that we had in this discussion that we're having now, it warrants a whole bunch of other questions. And I think the board wants that to be addressed, and that it impacts not this specific site plan, but the entire site plan, which is the St. John's complex, and how that is gonna be operated and run. And apparently, you're working with them on this, and that's not a bad thing, because then you can bring that to the table. If Father Quinn is closing that off, I think that the daycare should be treated the same way as the religious ed is treated, if that's the way he's gonna do it, and that needs to be presented to the board. That's number one. Number two, you then mentioned something about a sidewalk being created, again, outside of this particular scope of work, but part of
Nothing
it,
to do with this site.
I know,
It's
but
the
it's
same
part of,
site plan.
to me now, so is that site plan, who's putting in the sidewalk?
You could put a sidewalk in on your property.
Right, you have to, is it in the right of way?
No, of course not, it's on private property.
So where's the sidewalk going?
I just told you, it's going from the,
There's a vacant part of the lot between the.
Right.
I have-
old
Doesn't that
building
require
there
an
and
amended
that,
site
that
plan?
It's always been a
I would-
problem for people walking from
David.
this overflow parking, and frankly, I'd like to see that whole damn little spit road just closed and eliminated altogether. But
That is the
I believe,
problem.
is a town
And
road, and
we've gone through that
not
before.
gonna
But if it's,
happen,
if it's
so-
Westcoff Road is what it's called.
Yeah, that little.
Understood.
Westport Road and,
Off the table at this point, but.
Westcott, sorry. Westcott Road, there is no sidewalk there, and anything that's done on the road would have to get approval from the highway department. But it's being done in the right-of-way. The right-of-way extent, well, where's, I don't know where it's gonna be done, because you're not showing
I'm just
drawings.
gonna go back to the waiver. Why are
it's
we?
not part of his property.
There's houses, there's buildings.
That's what I'm saying. It's gotta hit the right-of-way.
Did you just say that?
No, it's not, why do you say something by taking it?
Westcott.
But Joe, it certainly has potentially impact the proper function of this facility, so.
Here's McMahon Place, this is church property, this is
That's not
church
the
property,
site.
this is church property.
There's a building,
Westcott.
building still there?
It's, yeah.
So it's going across the front of the convent and then into the vacant lot to this parking lot. So from here to here, does not touch any right of ways.
Well, if it's at the edge there, it's gonna hit a right-of-way at one point in time.
It ends at this property line.
I think that needs to come in for review for the building department and the highway department and the engineering department.
This is a church parking lot.
Right,
This is where they're gonna want CCD to park.
and then walk.
Pat, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
This is the church.
Let's look and say the whole thing, then you answer the best.
That's the house, right, the private house.
Be careful how you answer.
I'll try.
I'm saying, be careful how you answer.
Getting closer to Joe.
And the home school's up
CC,
here.
right here.
And CCD
That
is
building.
in the big school, and then the chapel's over.
Where's the daycare center's
This is
gonna
the
be?
chapel, right here's the chapel.
Was
And
used by a
this is the
school.
daycare here.
That's correct.
I used to drive school bus to that school. I've been all over this town. Now, let me ask you something.
Off here. And they have
That's
this
when it
one
was
off
busy.
here. Well, people are
You
parking
drop off
they're parking on
60
here.
kids
Right,
in the morning, and another restaurant behind you. That's congestion. What is so different
more
about
parking here too.
then than it is, but how many kids you gonna have there? What's make this so much greater?
That's your question,
Now,
Harold.
wait,
That was a school. There was a lot more than 60 kids.
I don't wanna get, what's so different about it? Can you answer me that one?
No, I can't, other than the number of kids.
There's less
It's
kids.
less kids. Yeah, that's what's different, fewer kids.
Number of kids
But
for
I-
this.
No,
Not the religious
Joe, I
ed.
understand what you said, drop off. So did I drop them kids off?
Yeah, well, this has a staggered drop-off.
Yeah, as opposed
That's the only
to,
thing I can see.
So
that we
did that have a staggered drop from 8:30 to 9:10?
The gym is in here.
I'm trying to, you know, some,
They built out the garden across the street.
what, I agree with Carl when it comes to things that should be presented before you grant a site plan. I agree with 100%. But I can't agree with how much more devastating this is gonna be
no, it's
than,
fewer.
than what it was back there when all this was going on. And I'm gonna tell you, that was busy times. These was not big kids, these was little kids. I just like to know the answer to that. I used to go to the doctor right on the corner of that, Dr. Stacy, nobody remember him? either.
And I would totally agree with you, Harold, and that's why I think it would be, make it that much simpler to go through a review process and have it done
Okay,
properly.
now let's see. What do we want to see? Can you fellas tell us what we want to see in this review process?
For a
What's-
full site plan?
What is that's not there now that we want to see?
Not much. It would be basically the same drawing. What I would want to see though now, based on this conversation, is the bigger plan.
But
of
that's a
everything.
separate site, that is, that is a
same
separate
site
tax
plan.
parcel, a separate site.
What-
And those uses basically are, as Harold said, have, are apart from the main, all the other building, the only other building is the main church.
So there's two
And this- and
separate
this
site
one-
plans?
Pardon?
There's two separate site plans?
Well, what do you mean two separate?
You just
sites?
said there's two
I
different
said,
tax?
no,
I would clarify
There-
that.
there are-
So this is an
just make-
institutional compound.
I
And
understand.
what we had before is sort of a master plan of the entire property. That's helpful for us. So right now, we have an issue that's been described this evening of CCD occurring.
Correct.
And Joel has said, people driving to CCD won't be able to go in that driveway. But if you're picking up your kid from daycare at 4 o'clock, you can. I don't know how you police that. I don't know how you make that distinction between two Chevy
But my question
vehicles
would
that are-
be, from a
The
planning
confusion will be too late.
standpoint,
Somebody will be in
is
there.
that if, and again, we don't know the answer because I don't know if it's two separate sites or it's one complex, okay? You have a use on what he's calling a separate
It is a
lot,
separate parcel.
okay? That's using the other parcel
Right.
for part of its need.
Yeah,
Because
and-
it's not self-contained within that lot.
You know,
But to
We're
Harold's
we're
point,
making
that's
mountains
been
out of
going on
molehills,
forever.
come on.
Huh?
But to Harold's point, that went on for years and years and
Forever.
years, right? So.
Harold is right. Do you know how many kids used to go there when the school buses?
I
the-
understand that. I can
The
look
intensity
at
was 10 times what it's going to be now.
So I would ask Harold's question again, what are we gonna see?
Nothing.
What are we gonna see different than we are seeing now?
Absolutely
I
not.
guess that's
There would
my-
be nothing different on the drawing, really. It's the same.
it'll be the same thing. Now, those kids, I understand, there is a big concern. Don't forget, I had a kid too, who went to school, and I used to go pick them up in, with school bus. We used to drop those kids off. Those kids was regulated. They didn't run all over the place, they couldn't, they got out there, and they went to where they were gonna go. How come that can't be?
It is going to be, because their parking is right by the door. Not a
Now,
bus in the middle of
I'm
the
gonna
parking
tell
lot and the
you,
kids running to
if
the
those
school.
kids and them people can pick up the kids across the other side of the street, they can pick up the kids on this side of the church and then go over there. If they can do that, then I don't think we should approve that at all. It's gotta be some kind of regulation to protect those kids.
That's exactly what we're doing here.
But I don't understand, once you do that, what's gonna make it any difference?
That's what I'm saying. We're talking about several thousands of dollars, a lot of time,
The
and
only
the
thing
same
that
plan.
the only thing I would like to see is that before we waive the site plan, that we have all the stuff that we need.
Which we.
That's what is
And there are
necessary.
pieces missing right now.
What
But
is missing?
then we can't go that route.
Documentation you talked about.
Oh, the
that
documentation,
thing.
absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
have to have those things.
I agree.
But to try to re-regulate everything there is not gonna, I don't see the sense in it.
Can I ask a question? When we waive a site plan, does a map that shows that use with all the requirements of a site plan get filed?
It does with the building permit, so that's what we do that all the time, because just like tonight, there are 4 arrows that are shown on that drawing that wouldn't get reflected anywhere other than the building permit that's issued for this use. So, as a matter of routine, Mike will always attach the waived document to his building permit applications. That's how, it's a matter of his practice. So there's always a record of this conversation with Mike.
And I'm gonna tell you, and Carl knows that I always speak straight with him. Carl's idea is, and there's nothing wrong with it, you shouldn't waive a site plan. Years ago, we waived no site plan.
Well,
He's gonna deny it, but he
no,
knows
no,
I
no,
know
no,
it.
I'm not.
That's his concern, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, Mike, I'm gonna,
But, see, waiving a site plan is there things that pertains to this site plan that has been, you can't see anything that's objectionable to it, and it's beneficial down the road to the person who's getting a waiver. That is something, is it beneficial to whoever this is, that we waive that site plan? Now, I question that. I question, is that necessary? But if there's nothing wrong with that site plan, we can keep it here for weeks and weeks and weeks, it's not gonna change
Mr.
nothing.
Chairman, I would disagree with that. So it should not be your objective to find out if this benefits the applicant.
No.
It doesn't matter.
Personally.
It is an issue that you can assure yourself that the town is not exposed in any way by granting.
Well, is the town exposed here, Pat?
and
There's really no change, so that's why we have said to you,
Is the
you
town here
consider.
exposed?
No, I
Then
believe so.
personally, I says, down the road, it's nothing that would have this to have to be stated there.
let me,
That's what I mean, not that.
That's why
not
the,
that people I'm not trying to please
Right,
people.
right.
Don't,
That's what I thought you were
I
saying,
did too.
Mr. Chairman. That's what I thought you were saying.
Let me ask this question, and as you said, is
Yep.
the town exposed? Okay, and again, this map here is gonna go filed with the building.
Yeah, the
permit.
benefit shouldn't be
If-
to the applicant, it should be to us and our process of reviewing this
And if we
application.
do,
That's what we should be
If we
looking
do a
at.
site plan review that's showing proper traffic flow
Yep.
in and out of the site, because,
Yep.
and a proper site plan, and the event that something happens somewhere down the line, okay?
Yep.
That somebody comes back and looks at it, okay? We didn't miss something on it, okay?
Yep.
It's not on that. It would be on the full.
It would be on the,
It would be on an actual site plan review, that we covered everything.
Yeah.
A lot of which, by the way, in the last two meetings, we've already covered.
yeah, I think you've covered.
That's my point.
And again, I could do that with any applicant. I can sit here and talk all night. They could ask for a waiver, and we can go through most applications and discuss most of their concerns and whatever before, and put it on a map, and then still have a waiver hanging out
Carl,
here.
listen, we have the,
until we,
can I just say one thing, Carl? We have a very unusual situation for our site plan waiver requests. In order to request a site plan waiver, you have to prepare a site plan. So other communities, you don't even do that. You go, I don't want to do anything for
Yeah,
you,
no,
give me
it
the
is.
waiver. And it's a very different situation. But we've required the preparation of a site plan that you will then waive, which then gets attached to a building permit application, so there's a record of what's going on.
that's not
done.
complete.
Well,
Not complete about
the code itself says site development plan approval is required in this chapter may be waived in whole or in part when the site development is for a conforming use or occupancy that will not enlarge an existing building, and where said conforming use or occupancy would also conform to all of the other requirements of this chapter.
And the answer is does.
we comply. Pretty much what
We
you got.
comply, so
So
I
you
don't,
asked about liability issues, you've vetted those issues. I don't see where it's an issue if you want to vote to waive it.
Yeah, I think this
again,
is
based
about
on all the
process,
comments
right?
today, I would
And I say we
request
just move it and just
Waive
vote
it.
on his waiver. Go ahead. Stop.
Pat, I want you to make sure you understand what I said. I wasn't talking about people sitting out there.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand, Mr. Chairman. I misunderstood.
I can't see anything out there that's going to improve different. It'll give us another meeting to talk about
Yeah,
something out there.
it would be a different piece of paper.
Yeah, but I can't see anything that we can improve on it. I don't see anything he can improve on it. See, there's times that this board has required nothing as small as that, but have the traffic coming. Of
course.
We stop the whole thing and make the board hires itself somebody who will plan that whole thing out.
Right. We've done
You
it many
can-
times.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Does this warrant it?
No, I think it's operational. It's the church saying we're going to require people to use
And
this
it's-
driveway as opposed to the other
And it's
driveway.
nothing that he's gonna go back there and build a new building.
No,
And everything new and all new parking and all new,
no, you don't require extra screening or
That's-
buffering or anything like that for this.
that's just me.
There really is no change.
But I'm also can tell the board that at one time, I don't know whether he was on the board or not, the board itself passed a resolution that we could not waive
Yep.
anything.
Yep.
There's no argument on it. You can do that if you want. That settles all the waiver problems.
You have discretion to vote
Those
this
are
up or
things
down.
that-
You don't
but
need
know,
anything else.
What happens when you, if you pass something like that? You don't get this,
No flexibility.
Yeah,
no,
right.
no, it's just somebody, but you know what it does? Does it help the board? Of course, but it helps the applicant. He knows that he can't get something waived. It's at the discretion of the board that says, well, we're not gonna entertain that anymore, we just waive that application along. You don't get no requests. I mean, some things you think about. Carl looked at me as I'm crazy.
No, actually, I'm just waiting to finish, because I think at this point, based on the discussion, I'm going to make a motion to accept waiver of site plan application for the Cozy Cove Daycare.
Well, I'm surely not gonna second it.
There's a motion on the floor.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Pat, can you call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Carl? For the motion?
Favor.
Dave?
Yes.
Kim?
No.
Against the motion?
Against.
Anthony?
I'm against the motion.
Against the motion, Carl?
Against the motion.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't have to.
You don't have to vote, it won't, the motion does not carry.
Now, just for the African lead, let's give him a directive. What are we looking for?
Now he needs to submit a site plan. That would come back before your board for site plan approval.
He got to submit the site plan of the whole property?
We're going to look at the legal descriptions of the whole property and determine if it's necessary. What I'm going to suggest is whether it is or it's not, that whole master plan be updated to deal with the issues of the sidewalk and those other improvements, so we know what's going on the whole campus.
And
But the
traffic-
approval,
and traffic flow, including CCD.
but the approval may be simply related to the site plan you saw before you. But we do want to know what's going on the whole campus.
Now, just a question on that. So we're all on the same page, we're going in the same direction, because I don't think it should be held up any longer than it should have.
They're not gonna pay to an entire site,
Hey,
plan, the entire,
Okay. You have a use on the property which relates to the other, if it's two different lots, which I think according to code, you have to include both.
If it does, and we'll
If
meet
it
with
does,
Gilda to
no.
clarify
I just
that.
don't-
If
just
you're
wanted to
using the
clarify.
other site for this use. So we'll clarify that.
Okay.
And if it's not, it's a condition of approval that he not use it. Then if they're using that property, he's violating his approval, so.
Can we kind of make a record of what we disagree with, what he doesn't have? What are some of the things? I'd like for the board to state, what are some of the things that they're looking for to be that it's not there?
we denied it.
think Yeah. we
can deal with the rest of it
No. Don't come back, bring the applicant back again and says, well, we don't, we need more of this. What do we want? Can you make a clarification picture of what it is?
I don't believe there's anything that would be required in addition to what you saw. That drawing, I mean, there may be some notes on it that need to be added or to meet our site plan.
What are we looking for that don't make that don't meet the requirements? What are we looking at tonight that doesn't meet the requirements? I think we have to be fair
Yes, you do.
with any applicant. What is it that we're looking for?
Yeah, the applicant has, certainly, I think, has a right to some guidance if this was not approved, that
Yes.
as to what
What are we
would
looking
make
for?
this site plan approvable.
Well, hold on, time out. Wait. First off, I don't think we denied him a site plan approval on anything. The only thing we
No, I didn't
denied
say-
is a
no,
waiver.
Nobody said you did
No,
not.
that's not what I said.
We're
That's not what I
saying he
meant.
can't get the waiver because there's things that we want to see him do.
Because
What are they?
we're asking him to file a complete application with a site plan.
Yeah, just to be
It's-
clear, Mr. Chairman, the
that's
motion was
the
to
denial.
grant the waiver. So that was denied.
What was?
It's unbelievable, I can't believe this is happening.
So the motion was to grant the waiver. That motion did not carry, so the waiver was not approved. So in order for him to gain approval for that daycare facility, he has to come back with a full site plan, fill out the full package. That's the decision you just made this evening.
What is he coming,
That's totally unfair.
what's he coming back with, Pat?
Basically that same plan, but he's gonna pay the site plan fee, he's gonna submit the application forms for a site plan. You're gonna have a public hearing on the site plan like you do for any site plan, and you'll grant site plan approval at the end of the day.
I would ask you to reconsider, because this is a terrible burden on a fledgling company that wants to do something good for the community.
Joe,
I'm flabbergasted.
the board it's nothing that we want to reconsider because it's something that's
Now we're talking
need.
about months and months and months, and we're talking about, till we get on the agenda, it's gonna be sometime in October, November. You don't have certainty, it's not gonna get approved for next year. And that, they lose another season that way. The whole idea was to try to get this thing completed and the work done, so they could open up for the spring season. That's now, it's impossible. Really, I can't believe that, I met all the requirements of the code, all the requirements of the consultants,
Thank you, Joe.
Can I ask for reconsideration?
I won't call for the motion. Thanks a lot. Think we should have given some direction of what's missing.
There's nothing
What's
missing,
missing
Mr.
there?
Chairman. There's nothing missing.
Then why are we asking for them to go back and do it over?
That was, you guys voted on it. There's nothing that would be this, probably the very same plan. It's process and procedure, it's called.
What he really needed to do is come back with the plan, with a little bit more information.
It would have been in his best interest to
Would have been
do
in his
that.
best
But
interest to
how long,
incorporate
and again, I'll go
everything.
back to this.
Show the sidewalk, the CCD vehicular traffic.
See, this is part of my problem, and it goes back to what you talked about, how our code is different. We actually request somebody to put a site plan in front of
Yeah.
us rather than just ask for a waiver. We get to a point where we're reviewing something
Did it anyway.
at a meeting. We're doing a review.
Right.
You know, what applicant doesn't deserve that right? I could walk in here and hang and ask a waiver right from the beginning. And based on some of the things I've seen that we've done with waivers, you could almost go through an entire review and then act on a waiver.
But
And it's really not the purpose of a waiver. A waiver is that it's a simple, whatever process, that's not gonna have a large impact, as Joe read out, that we can act on almost immediately when somebody comes in front of us. It shouldn't be something that's drawn out to multiple meetings, to multiple reviews, starting asking questions specifically that we would actually ask during a review. Because that's really not what they're asking for. They're asking us to give a review and then waive it at the same time.
I
You know what I'm
certainly
saying?
understand what-
That's where I have a real issue with some of
I
these.
certainly understand what you're saying, Carl, but in the end, the process allows him, right, the process, whatever it is, allows him to do what he's doing, right?
To
So-
ask for a waiver.
So he can ask for a waiver, and he can ask for it in the manner that he did, and we have to look at it, right? So we did that. That's my thing. In the end, I don't know that this process that we're gonna make him go through now is gonna change anything.
No, I don't think it will.
And
I'm
in the end,
gonna
we're
tell
not
you,
gonna
not
get
a
anything
thing.
different. It's just that we don't,
It's
in the end,
gonna-
I don't really like the way the process went here either.
I
but
think
The
there's,
process is what it is, right?
well, I think there were a few things that kind of, first off, and I was gonna bring it up, but I just let it go. When he started talking about pre-existing uses. I don't know, Joe, you tell me, what's pre-existing uses that?
I'm not gonna tell you that, I'll tell you this, though. Presently, there's no application before the board.
Right here.
I think you should probably entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.